So, after 2 failed therapy appointments, I decided to take matters into my own hands and talk a little bit about my PTSD triggers. And the reason I got a therapist was because I wanted to talk about my childhood history and just how to continue my life. And that's basically my main goal, was to just have someone to talk about, because Colin can't take it anymore. He can only handle so much of it. So anyway, I got the therapist hoping that he would go into the PTSD stuff with me. And today he kind of literally just was like, yeah, you have severe PTSD. I'm going to send you this checklist. Our appointment was only 20 minutes per se. And he was like, I'm going to send you this checklist. It's going to help people with PTSD. And you may not resonate with all of it, but it'll definitely help you if you go through it all. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I had tried to give him an example of something that is like PTSD that I don't really consider PTSD. And that's part of the issue as well, is that when I'm just going to tell you a few stories about just scenarios in my life. My voice is shaking because these few situations in my life for some reason really stuck with me. Anyway, so I was trying to tell him about my first trigger, which I have hundreds and hundreds of triggers. I didn't know they were triggers. They're just things that I saw that reminded me of a situation, and then I would just replay that situation, not out of oh, poor me. I would just be like, oh, wow, I remember that time, which is also kind of key in this. My mentality is that when I look at all these things that have happened, and when I tell the stories of them, it's to me, it's just a memory. It's not a bad story. It's a memory. So I'm just explaining what happened. And I'm like, oh yeah, it was really, that this happened and that happened. And it's not an emotional response. I just explain it kind of what it is. And people are like, wow, that's a lot to handle. So there's that. So I just wanted to give an example of the few stories that, not the few stories, but some of the stories that are really stupid, but stuck with me for the rest of my life. And I'll start with this includes 4 triggers in one night. It was a night, I was younger. I was probably in 5th grade, 6th grade. Maybe I was younger than that, but probably 3rd or 4th grade. And we were driving to the Neptune Diner, which was 15 minutes away, and it was my mom and my dad, my sister and I, and they had been fighting all night, all night. And we were accustomed to that, so they fought all night, and then we were all going to the diner. So we were going to the diner, and on the way there, I was at a stoplight next to the Cumberland Farms. I remember specifically exactly where it was, and they were fighting, and I was like, Mom, listen to this song on the soundtrack. And I had this is trigger number 2, pink chrome and the word princess. I had a pink chrome princess CD player, the little handheld CD player, and I took out the disc and I handed it to them because it was Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron soundtrack. So it was whatever year that came out, was around when this happened. And my mom put it in there, the song started. I was kind of doing this in a way of shut up everyone, I want to have this moment to show you the song. And they kept fighting through the song, and we were at a stoplight, and my mom just jumped out of the car and just fucking walked away and just left. And I was like, what the fuck? And then my dad just kept driving to the fucking Neptune Diner. Mom didn't just jump out of the fucking car. So he's like, oh, she's just mad, she'll call back. And I'm like, okay. So my sister and I, my dad, we go to the diner. My mom never calls. And then my sister is unfazed by this. This is the weird part. I was very emotionally attached to my mom. I would kill for her in a heartbeat. And I was so just destroyed that they just decided to keep going to this diner and leave Mom. So that's one memory. She ended up walking all the way home, and we found her on the side of the road. Oh man, I have a lot of memories now. This is gonna be a really long video. Yeah, I should probably record this on my computer. Shit. Yeah, anyway. So that's one memory. That includes Neptune Diner, pink chrome, the word princess, spirit salad of the Cimarron, and red lights all remind me of that one situation. Another situation, pina coladas and Tupperware. My parents got in a big fight one night. I was trying to study for a Bible verse rehearsal thing. I went to a private Christian school, and we had like these weekly verses that we had to memorize and then write out at the end of the week. So I was trying to get help from that with my mom and like my dad and my sister. It was just everything was, my mom and dad was fighting. And my mom she wanted to leave. She's like, I need to get out of here. And I was like, oh my God, no, take me with you. And she did. And we went up the hill and we sat on the aqueduct, which is like this big, it's this thing that leads to like New York City to water, but it's a big mound of grass basically. And we sat there and we pulled over and we started studying for this Bible verse, and my mom whips out this blue fucking Tupperware container and just opens it up and starts like slurping it, and it's a giant pina colada. And then she ended up giving some to me, and this is like, I was a child, and that's also like an interesting thing. I started drinking at a really young age and for terrible reasons, but not like to escape things, just because it was like, here, taste this pina colada. I'm like, ooh. But pina coladas remind me of that story. And Tupperware. Another story, Lilo and Stitch, that is a trigger, but like I said, when I say trigger, they're not bad. I'm not like, ooh, I hate that. They're just things that remind me of it. So Lilo and Stitch, I don't recall the situation. Basically, I do recall the situation. My mom bought a house for my dad to live in, to get away from our family, because he was like abusive and addicted to pornography and a very bad man. And my mom couldn't afford to get a divorce, but if he stayed in the household, CPS threatened to take us away. So my mom was like, fuck it, I'm gonna buy him a fucking shitty little cabin in the middle of bumfuck nowhere so he could just be by himself and suffer. And so she did that. She bought him a house in Pennsylvania, and he went and he left, and he basically disappeared for like 8 years. But he would sneak back and forth sometimes to like steal like important like tax stuff and like money basically from my mom, because he had a raging porn addiction and spent like over like $50,000 on pornography and pornography related things and anything related to that nature. He had a problem, obviously. So my mom was like, oh, let's go for want to go for a car ride or whatever, because these are always just car rides for me. And she's like, want to go like to dad's house? And I'm like, okay. And she would explain it to me, and she's like, all right, I want to get this back and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't care, whatever. And I was, listen, this is like 2005. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. So we get to his little cabin and he's sleeping. And this is like one of the most guilty things I've ever felt. And like, it was like, I think the first time I felt guilt. I break into his house. I'm small, so I had to go in, and I break into his window. Well, not break it, but like crawl through it. And my mom's like explaining like where all this stuff is, and I'm like getting it. And I go past his bedroom, and I see him sleeping there. And on his dresser across from him was this stupid Lilo and Stitch plush that I had. It was Stitch, and I was obsessed with it because like he had like retractable like arms and those things. It was my favorite Stitch. And my dad had it there just sitting on his dresser, and I took it because I was like, oh my God, I've been looking everywhere for this. And so I took the Stitch, I took the stuff I had to steal, got back in the car, we started driving home, and I just started losing it and crying. And my mom was like, oh my God, what happened? And then I showed her the Stitch, and she was like, oh, I'm happy you have it. And then I was like, I feel like this is the only thing he had of me left. And I just took it from him. And she was like, fuck. So she actually turned around and drove me back to the house, woke him up, and had him go out and have lunch with me so I could like talk to him and give him like talk to him. And then he like let me take the Stitch back. So I'm really proud that my mom like saw how hurt I was, and she turned around and went back. But like that was like the first time I felt guilty. Like like, yeah, it was weird. It was a weird feeling. So when I see Lilo and Stitch, I'm like, I think of that whole ordeal. The whole ordeal. Me going into the house, the color of the house, everything is like crystal clear in my mind. And I don't get upset by it though. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that time. Blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just a memory. I'm like, whatever. Yeah, it is what it is. I don't want to make this too long, but there's like way more. There's so many more. But fuck. Basically, any sound of gravel on the driveway, like the car gravel. Most of my life was either spent chasing my mom out the door, not out of anger, but she would leave when she would get overwhelmed with my dad being, a fucking terrible human being and her just not feeling adequate and feeling like a terrible mother. She would like often just like get in her car and like she would just drive down the road. Like she wouldn't like leave. She would just be like, I need to escape. I need to let's get out of this house. And then I wouldn't know that. And then I'd hear the gravel of the driveway and I'd look out the window and I see her car going down the driveway. And I'm like, where is she going? Like, is she coming back? Because we didn't have cell phones during this time either. Like that wasn't a thing. And I would run on foot down my driveway a mile long and try to catch up to her car. And I did this probably like 15 times in my life. And she felt guilty like really bad one day. And I was like, promise that you'll take me with you the next time that if you ever run away, promise on your life that you're going to take me with you. And she was like, I promise. And she actually never did run away without me after that. We would run away together, which was still a really fucked up scenario, but she'd be like, Lauren, let's go. Let's get out of here. So we would just go and we would go somewhere for a few hours. But yeah, so the sound of gravel, but then that also extended to the sound of gravel when my sister would be like manic and she would want to kill herself and she would go and get in her car and just go somewhere. And we would be like, holy fucking shit, she's gonna go fucking drive into a tree. Like she's gonna do something, like, and she would just like turn off her phone and just fucking bolt off. And this was when she was like 17, 18. So I was in like 8th grade. So I was in middle school. I was old. But yeah, the sound of the fucking keys rattling or someone going onto gravel, I'll just think of her running away, me running to get the keys, to steal the keys from her before she can try to run away and kill herself, or the sound of my mom running away. And then also, my mom one time was trying to stop my dad from taking something. It was something important. And I remember like I was running out there and she was chasing the car down the drive, like he was pulling out and she's like banging on the hood and like, like in the movies where they're like, stop, get out, blah, blah. And she was doing that and I was standing there and I was like, bah! And so I'm like trying to grab her and also trying to stop the car. And he fucking just whips it and fucking bashes her, basically almost like runs over her leg and then like, which throws me back too. And then he just guns in, he goes and that's it, he left. And she had these fucking bruises on her legs that were like a foot long, like 3 feet long. And that was it. Like that just happened. And that was that. Like that, okay, let's go back inside. Like, and the reason that the cops aren't involved, by the way, this is the whole thing, was because I had called the cops hundreds of times when I was younger, because my mom would literally be like at my dad's like hand, like about to die. And I called the cops a lot. And it got to the point where they were like, all right, this is a very toxic environment. If we get a call like this again, we're going to actually have to remove your children from the premise and put them in like foster care. My mom was like, oh God. And I was like, oh God. So I just never called the cops again after that, because I was like, no, I don't want that to happen. We got this. This is fine. So that's why police weren't really involved, but they were involved more when my sister was like suicidal, because we could not get to her and it was very stressful. I'll stop here though. This is like a 15-minute video, but this is just an example of, I guess, what people would call triggers and what, PTSD does to you. Like I said, I don't get sad when I think of all these things. I just think of them, and I just think of them as memories. And then they are sad memories, and the fact that they've lasted me this long and have left that weird impact on me is something that's like pretty significant. But I have like hours and hours of stories like this that, like, honestly, one day I'm just gonna write a fucking book, because I just need to like tell someone, because I never got to tell anyone, because no one would listen, or like they would think I'm exaggerating, and I'm like, why would I fucking lie about this? Like, really? But people accuse me of that. They're like, oh yeah, you just want attention. I was like, oh my God. And that made me just not want to talk about it. So here I am, fucking million years later, complaining online. But yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of my story. And all right, I'm gonna go smoke a bowl now and cry. I'm not gonna cry.